What's up, guys? It's Blake, the boomer that plays Highlander, back again to talk about some cards. Today we're continuing the Commander Legends Legendary set review. We're going to be talking about all the monocolor commanders and the backgrounds. All the monocolor commanders have the choose a background mechanic on them. We're going to be going in Wooburg order. We're going to talk about the commanders first, mostly because those are the cards that actually matter. That's what the backgrounds are centered around. That's what your deck's going to be centered around. Then we're going to talk about the background second. Most of them are fine to unplayable. A lot of the commanders and backgrounds here are going to be balanced for limited, so rarity matters a lot here. And generally, my consensus on this is that if you are interested in playing the commander plus a color, which some of them are definitely good enough on their own, then I'm interested in their potential in EDH. The cards that are kind of, don't really quite have enough on their face as the commander, the background's not going to serve them a whole lot extra. The backgrounds are just kind of very dependent on your commander existing on the battlefield and your commander doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. So yeah, that's primarily where I'm sitting on these. We're going to try to roll through them. There's a ton of cards I'm going to be talking about here. But yeah, the ones that are mostly made for limited, I'm just going to say, hey, this is mostly made for limited, but maybe it has X potential, and so on. So yeah, we'll get into it. Thanks for all the subs. Do all the algorithm stuff, like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it. First up, we're going to talk about the white cards. We got Abdul, Adrian, Gorian's Ward. Always start out with the funky names. 4 and a white for a 4/4 human warrior. When this enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you control until this leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 soldier token for each permanent exiled this way. This card is a pretty decent one. We're starting off on a good note here. I like what this one's doing. It's kind of like a protect your board / flicker effect. It leaves you with some protection when you get rid of all your permanents by making you a bunch of 1/1s. And it'll help you trigger any sort of enter or leaves the battlefield effects multiple times. I think there's some ways to loop this as well. I don't remember what they're off the top of my head. But yeah, either way, this card is pretty sweet. Good card. Yep. We'll move along here. Next up, Ellen Harbury's Busybody. 3 and a white for a 2/4 human peasant. Tap. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of tokens you've created this turn. Put one of those into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is a limited card for sure. The effect is not like completely irrelevant, but this just doesn't do enough lifting to make it worth your commander. Yep, simple as that. We'll move on. Next up, Lae'zel, Valakith's Champion. Sure, we'll go with that. 2 and a white for a 3/3 Gith Warrior. If you would put one or more counters on a creature or planeswalker you control, or on yourself, put that many +1 of each of those counters on that permanent or player instead. This card's very playable. This is basically like a hardened scales in your command zone. Being in white too is really nice. White has a lot of cards that care about 1/1 counters and putting 1/1 counters across your team and all sorts of stuff. And this will amplify all of those by 1. Super good, super playable card. Definitely not broken or anything. But this card's pretty impressive. This card will also find its way into 99. It's good enough for that too. And your +1 counters, etc. deck. Next up, Lulu Loyal Hollyphant. 3 and a white for a 3/2 flyer Elephant Angel. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, put a 1/1 counter on each tapped creature you control, then untap them. This card's pretty decent. The fact that it only does it on your tapped creatures is a pretty nice balancing tool that they've used here to make it definitely pretty fair. But this card's definitely still pretty good. It's very easy to make a permanent leave the battlefield under your control when you alpha strike with a bunch of tokens or whatever. This will put counters on them and untap them all. And you probably lost one in the process. I got somebody probably stood in front of it and ate it or something, So yeah, this card is pretty playable. Definitely don't expect to see this card a ton as the commander, but it is playable. Definitely not just limited filler. Next up, Rasad Bashir, 2 and a white for a 0/3 human monk. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. That's why it's a 0/3. Whenever Rashad Basir attacks, if you have the initiative, double the toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. This card's quite nice. I like this effect. In mono white, we have some effects like this with like Doran the Siege Tower and stuff. But this allows you to kind of have the flexibility of a background, which is cool. And then it also has a pretty cool like sort of Alpha Strike Anthem sort of effect with the second ability. If you happen to build your deck to have some initiative in it, which you might as well if this commander's asking you to do it. And the initiative's pretty good. So, yeah, I think this card's fine. I'll expect to see this here and there. It's a decent commander. Moving on to the blue cards. Next, we have Allura, Merry Thief, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Halfling Rogue. Whenever you attack, up to one target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. I like this card. I think this card's pretty solid. Definitely not limited filler. Pretty fair card. You only get to make one thing unblockable. And when you do, at the end step, you have to bounce it to your hand. But making something unblockable each turn that you attack, including the turn that you play this, is quite nice. And you can get some pretty good, reliable combat damage to a player triggers and stuff like that. Or you can get a creature in safely if you need it to tap for whatever reason. Yeah, I like this card. It's not like a super impressive card, but I could see somebody building around this. Be fine. Next up, Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. 2 and a blue for a 1/3 human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to one target card of the other type from your graveyard. They really wanted to use that formatting, you can tell. If a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile instead. Okay, this card is interesting. Notably, you do have to pay the mana cost on the other card that you're giving flashback. But, you know, it's fine. This is a decent value card. I'm not super impressed with this. This doesn't do enough. If it was like whenever you cast one of the cards, you get to cast the other one from your graveyard for free as long as it has lesser CMC or something like that. Something just a tad bit more pushed. I think that would still be fine and be pretty powerful and interesting. But like still be balanced because you have to play a balance of instant sorceries and kind of juggle them between your graveyard and stuff. So I don't think this card does enough. I think this card needed a little bit more push, but it's fine. Imoen, Mystic Trickster, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 with Human Rogue Wizard, has Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, draw a card. Then draw another card if you've completed a dungeon. This card's fine, I guess. If you are in the initiative deck, then maybe. But I think there's probably better commanders if you want to be in the initiative deck. Even other commanders that have blue in them, like we talked about in the multicolor commanders. Some of those ones that I said were mostly for limited are probably better than this. So I would say that this one's probably mostly for limited as well. Next up, Minari, Merchant of Marvels, 3 and a blue for a 2/4 Dragon Artificer. You may cast dragon spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. This one's mostly limited, I think. This card's technically not unplayable, but this effect's just not desirable enough for the mana cost, I would say. Yeah, I'm just not impressed with this card. If you want to play like Vidalcan Orrery or like Leyline of Anticipation or something, I would rather play those than this, just because they give every spell you have flash, your sorceries, your non-dragon spells, your non-artifact spells, and that's quite a bit of an upgrade. The only place I would play this in exactly is a Dragon Artifact deck, which I guess you could build, but like, I don't see why you would. Yeah, mostly limited to me. Next, Vol, Candlekeep Researcher, 3 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard with vigilance. Add an amount of colorless mana equal to Vol's toughness. This mana can't be spent to cast spells from your hand. This card is pretty interesting, actually. Even if you don't amplify the toughness of this thing taps for 3 mana for casting spells that aren't from your hand, which is a ton of stuff. That's stuff in your graveyard, aka spells with flashback. That's cards in exile from like Impulse Draw. That's your commanders. That's your backgrounds. There's a lot of foretell stuff. There's a lot of things you can do with this. I definitely could see a deck built around this. I don't think this is limited filler. And if you can amplify its toughness or like start doing like untappy shenanigans with this thing can generate a ton of mana. So yeah, I like the knobs that they used on this card to balance it, but also give you a ton of mana. So I think this card's sweet. I expect to see some decks around this. Next up, we got Volo, Itinerant Scholar. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, create a Volo's Journal, a legendary colorless artifact token with hexproof, and the token has this text on it. Whenever you cast a creature spell, note one of its creature types that hasn't been noted for this artifact. Okay. And then Volo has the ability of pay 2, tap, draw a card for each creature type noted for target permanent you control named Volo's Journal. Just an absolute. This card has way too many words on it, but what it just says is whenever you cast a spell, you note the creature type on the journal, and then you can pay 2 and tap and draw a card for the things that you have noted on the journal. Hexproof is probably not. I mean, it's pretty good protection for the journal, but it's not good enough. I mean, if they just like a lot of people will just play mass artifact removal nowadays with Vandal Blast and such. So I don't really think this card's good enough. Plus, you have to untap with the journal and Volo on the battlefield to get anything out of them, because Volo's the one with the ability to draw the cards, and the journal's the one that keeps track of how many cards you need to draw. So I'm just not impressed with this card at all. It's cute. I anticipate seeing some decks around it because it's cute, but yeah, I just don't think this card's very good. I mean, nowadays, one nice thing is creatures have so many extra subtypes because they want to like influence party and that sort of stuff, that a lot of times when you cast a creature spell, even if you have like a lot of elves in your deck, some are like elf druids, elf warriors, elf shamans, elf whatever. So I think it's pretty easy to get multiple creature types on the journal. But you still actually have to cast the spell, spend mana, then you have to have mana left over to actually draw cards, yada, yada, yada. There's just way too many hoops for me to jump through here for me to be interested in this card. But I anticipate some people will build around it. But I don't think it's particularly good, even though it's got a lot of words on it. Zelix Sanity Flare, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 horror. Whenever a player mills one or more creature cards, you create a 1/1 black horror creature token, and you can pay 1 and tap this. Target player mills 3 cards. I do like how whenever they mill any number of cards, as long as one of them's a creature, you get a creature token, and it's a horror, so the creature type matters here, I assume. And this kind of helps you mill. The mana, the rate on this card, 3 mana is like a fine rate for me to pay for a commander with text I care about. All that being said, this card, if you're like exactly horror tribal and you don't want to run the like main commander for the commander deck here that this is coming from, the pirate dude, whatever his name was, then like I guess you could play this, but I don't know. I just think the other commander has way more to do. This card's just this seems like it'd be a card in that deck, but I don't anticipate seeing this much as a commander or outside of exactly horror tribal. Because I don't think it's exactly a very good mill commander, because you can only mill one player with its ability. Yeah, this card's kind of whatever to me. On the black cards, first up we have Safana, Cullenport Cutthroat, 2 and a black for a 3/2 human rogue. It has Menace. At the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, create a treasure token. Create 3 of those tokens instead if you've completed a dungeon. Whew. Creating 3 treasure tokens on your end step for a 3-mana creature is pretty good. The only thing is you have to care about the initiative. That's what this card cares about. This is obviously the dungeon commander of these. But it does a pretty good job of being the dungeon commander. The Menace is definitely nothing to scoff at here either. It'll help you get the initiative back on the early turns if you introduce it real early and somebody takes it from you. I like this card. I think this card's solid. If you want to build a dungeon deck out of this set of commanders, this is probably my vote. Next up, Servok Deathbringer. 3 and a black for a 3/4 human knight. The beginning of each player's end step, if no permanents left the battlefield this turn, that player loses X life or X is Servok's power. This card's pretty cute, but I don't think it's actually very good. Your opponents can play around this real easy with fetch lands, sack outlets, tons of stuff if the damage is actually a threat to them. And you also have to play around this. Presumably you can play around this real easily since you're in black, that you can sack your own things and do all that stuff reliably. You're just hoping that your opponents can't do that, but hoping your opponents can't do that and your payoff is just making them lose a little bit of life is pretty whatever. So this is a limited card. Next up, Shadowheart, Dark Justicar. 3 and a black for a 3/4 human elf cleric. 1 black, tap, sacrifice another creature. Draw X cards where X is that creature's power. This card's pretty cool. This is like a repeatable Disciple of Bolas, which is a pretty playable card in Commander. So I don't think this card's like super insane or anything, but I anticipate seeing this card as a Commander. Seems fine. Next up, Sephirous Nightmare Speaker. 3 and a black for a Snake Cleric Warlock 3/3. Alright, this is probably the worstly worded ability I've ever seen on a Magic card. So I'll read it and then I'll explain it. Because it's not very intuitive. Tap and sack another creature or an artifact. For each opponent, you mill a card. Then return that card from your graveyard to your hand unless that player plays 3 life. So when I initially read this, and from most people I've like kind of tested on this and asked them what they thought that the card that you sacrificed was the card that you would return to your hand, but it's actually the card that you mill. So you mill the card for each opponent, and then the card that you mill for that opponent, you say, hey, do I get this, or do you want to pay 3 life? And then they make their decision, then you go to the next player, you say, hey, do I get this, or do you want to pay 3 life? And then you do that for the third player, and so on. All that being said, I don't think this card's good. This card kind of sucks. It just doesn't do enough. Yeah. And your opponents are just basically always going to play the life unless the card's completely irrelevant, which it rarely will be, but who cares? 3 life is nothing in Commander. This is mostly a limited card, but this card is hilariously bad worded. I don't know why they worded it this way. I think they were just trying to be cute with it and try to get funky with the wording on it just because they think they can. Like we've seen with some of the other cards in the set, they use real funny wording. But yeah, this card's worded awfully, but that's what it does. And it's mostly for limited. I don't anticipate seeing this much as a Commander. Really cool art, though. Next up, Vicana, Drow, Apostate. Vicana? I guess that's right. 2 and a black for an Elf Cleric 2/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 more creature cards in your graveyard, return a creature at random from your graveyard to your hand. This card's just like Unsouled Cemetery on a creature. I think I heard Gavin Verhey even say that somewhere, like on one of his shows or something, talking about this card. Oversouled Cemetery is a really cool card. It's a 2-mana card, 2-mana enchantment with Threshold. And if you have the Threshold... Wait, is that the Threshold one? I think it's the Threshold one. You return a creature from your graveyard randomly to your hand. And this does the same thing, but instead of having Threshold, because that's a weird keyword to put in this set, they just decided to put if you have 4 more creatures. Which is honestly probably easier to hit than Threshold, but maybe not. So yeah, this card's cool. I anticipate seeing it as a Commander here and there, but this card's not like that powerful. It's just cool. Yeah, it's just cool. Berakos, Party Leader. 3 and a black for a 2/4 Orc. This is also a Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard. So it counts for any member of your party, basically. Whenever this attacks, defending player loses X life, and you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of creatures in your party. So like I was talking about last video, this is from the Party Precon. And this is definitely the Commander you should run over the Face Commander, along with the Mythic background that we'll get into later. This just does a lot more than that does. It allows you to create a ton of mana, and it counts for each member of your party, which is really nice for that deck because you're going to need help filling up your party with this. And you don't have to have a full party to, get your treasures, which is also very important. Anytime you have a card that cares about party, in my opinion, if you can get something out of it before having a full party, because having 4 creatures on the battlefield is like not the easiest thing in the world. So as long as you can get something out of it before that, then I'm in. So I'm in for this card. I think this one's pretty good if you want to play party. Onto the red cards. Amber Griselomall, 3 and a red for a 3/3 Dwarf Cleric. It has haste. Whenever this attacks, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw a card for each player being attacked. This is mostly for limited. This card is not unplayable in Commander, but it's just not impressive. Doesn't do enough. So just mostly a limited card to me. Ganex, Astral Hunter, 4 and a red for a 3/4 Flying Dragon. Whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you create a treasure token. Once again, mostly a limited card. I don't anticipate seeing this as a Commander. However, I could see this in the 99 of a Dragon Tribal deck. especially if you're not 5 colors, because you'll need some dragons to fill out your dragon deck if you're not in 5 colors. But I mean, even in a 5 color deck, you get treasures, which will help fix your mana if you're on like a budget dragons deck or something. And sometimes even if you have the best mana base you can in 5 colors, sometimes your mana can get tricky. So I think this card's like probably playable in the 99 of a dragon's deck, but this card's not good enough to be a commander. Next up, Gut. Gut, True Soul Zealot. 2 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Shaman. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature or an artifact. If you do, you create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace that's tapped and attacking. This card's not quite good enough for commander. However, in 1v1 formats, I see this card being pretty effective. Making a 4/1 with menace with essentially haste the turn this comes out is pretty sweet for your aggro deck. So I anticipate in like a 1v1 format, like maybe like 1v1 Commander or Canadian Highlander, which I do want to try at some point, but I can't get anybody to play with me. I could see Gut playing in those, but not really in Commander. This isn't really a Commander card. This is just a limited card mostly. A not limited card is Carlock of Fury of Avernus, 4 and a red for a 5/4 Tiefling Barbarian. Whenever you attack, if it's the first combat phase of the turn, untap all attacking creatures. They gain first strike until end of turn. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Whew. Wow. This one is very, very good. Whenever you attack, you get first strike and an extra combat. So yeah, and it does it the turn it comes out. It's not when this attacks, it's whenever you attack. This card's incredibly pushed. This card is just going to run people over. Man, there's not much to say about this card that isn't obvious. This card's just powerful. Getting extra combats immediately is good. It gives your creatures first strike. This card's scary. While Blade of Frontiers, 1 and a red for a 1/1 Human Warlock. If you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest roll. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, put a 1/1 counter on this. This is just a way. This card isn't very good, but it is a way that you can play a dice rolling deck in colors that aren't currently supported. Mostly dice rolling right now is in red-blue. But if you want to play like red-green or red-black dice rolling or something, this gives you a way to do it with the background. The payoff here is pretty not anything as far as putting 1/1 counters on this. You mostly just want to care about the extra die roll. So it's like a Crux Thumb in the command zone, which is a pretty nice effect if you're a dice rolling deck. But that's all it does is help facilitate other colored dice rolling decks. All the other red-blue dice rolling decks that already exist probably have better commanders as they are. But this one's not bad. Next up, Balath, Baritol Entertainer. 4 and a red for an Elf Shaman, 2/5. Creatures your opponents control with power less than Balath's power are goaded. Whenever a goaded attacking or blocking creature dies, you create a treasure token. Wow, this card's also very impressive. Notably, if your opponents like pump their creatures before combat to be bigger than this, they no longer have to attack. They're no longer goaded. So because it's the goad says they attack each combat if able, and they attack a player other than you if able. As long as they're not being goaded, because this like basically passively goads. It doesn't, and as long as they get out of that requirement of having less power than him, they can attack you. So all that being said, maybe that was pretty straightforward for some people, but I wanted to help elaborate on it a little bit in case they got some feels bads from it. That being said, I would recommend amplifying this thing's power a little bit. 2 is a little bit of a low range to get out of, but the effect is very powerful here. And you even get some extra treasure when all the mayhem is commencing. Whenever attacking or blocking creature dies, that's goaded. So if your opponent swings at one of your other opponents and they both have 2/2s and they trade, you get 2 treasures because they were both goaded. Less than, sorry. So it would be 1/1s in this case, but if you pumped it, it would be 2/2s. But yeah, getting out of the range of this thing's goad is really easy. So I would recommend trying to amplify this thing's power with something, whether it's swords or whatever. But this card's really cool. I really like the design of this card. It's good. I anticipate seeing this. Livan, Cultist of Tiamat. 2 and a red for a 1/3 Dragon Shaman. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the spell's mana value. I wouldn't sleep on this card. That's a pretty powerful effect. Any sort of like evasive creature that you have, you can grow it up immensely, very easily with this effect. And it's non-creature. It doesn't even have to be instant or sorcery. Whenever you cast your mana rocks and planeswalkers and whatever else, they get your creature gets amplified. So I definitely anticipate getting burned out by this thing eventually. This card is not to be slept on for sure. Definitely not a limited card here. This card is kind of scary. Onto the green cards. Ernest Gloomstalker, 2 and a green for a 3/3 Halfling Ranger. It has Death Touch. Whenever it attacks, you return a land from your return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Notably, the land is not tapped, and you can get any land. So, and this thing has Death Touch, so it's pretty annoying to block. And you get it on attack; it's not on damage. All that being said, I think this card's pretty sweet. I could definitely see this being played as a commander. This will honestly be a quite good 99 card. But yeah, I mean, we have a lot of lands commanders now, but this is kind of like a weird ramming up excavator in your command zone, which might entice some people, might be interesting to people. So yeah, I could see this being a commander for some decks, and definitely a playable card in its own right in the 99. So definitely not just a limited filler card here. Halsen Emerald Archdruid, 3 and a green for a 2/4 Elf Druid. You can pay 1 mana until end of turn. Target token you control becomes a green bear creature token with base power 4/4, in addition to its other colors and types. This is mostly a limited card. Just being able to turn your clues into 4/4s or whatever is like not really a good enough effect, I would say, for commander. You could technically run this, but I just wouldn't. Speaking of cards, this is basically the exact opposite of the last card. This is your greens token card you do want to run as your commander. Jari, Friend of the Forest, 2 and a green for a 2/3 Human Elf Druid. Tokens you control have tap, add a green mana. Wow, that's a very powerful effect. Notably, it gives it to all your tokens, your food, clues, and treasures, your Sapperling tokens, all that stuff. What I would recommend is that I would primarily build around this for non-creature tokens. Because the tokens that you make that are creatures, they're summoning 6, so they won't be able to tap for green mana immediately. Unlike a similar effect, Urza, which is kind of crazy. I'm comparing this card to Urza, but it is Urza Light, I would say. Urza, you just tap the artifact with its ability to make a blue mana. This gives the token the ability to tap for green mana, which means it's still affected by summoning sick effects and such. So primarily, I would recommend using non-creature tokens and tapping them for mana, using them as kind of lotus petals that you don't have to sack, basically. That being said, I definitely think this is Urza Light. This card is the real deal. I anticipate seeing this in the 99s of decks. I anticipate seeing this as a very good commander in its own right. This commander is not broken, but it is very powerful. Do not sleep on this card. Skanos Dragonheart, 4 and a green for a 4/4 Dragon Ranger. When this attacks, it gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is the greatest power among other dragons you control and dragon cards in your graveyard. Limited card. I don't anticipate seeing this in the 99 of decks, really. And I don't anticipate seeing this as a commander for sure. Wilson, Refined Grizzly, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Bear Warrior. Get ready for all these words. This spell can't be countered. Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Ward 2. This card is pretty funny, but it is actually, I think, pretty good. This is quite a good Voltron commander, I would say. And the Ward 2 is a really nice touch on here. Can't be countered. It's got all the right keywords on it. It protects you with Reach. It's proactive and defensive with Vigilance. And Trample helps you get through jump blockers. So I think this has all the right words on it. I definitely anticipate seeing this as a commander. Definitely not OP or anything, though. Durian of the Yawning Portal, a.k.a. Lenny Kravitz. 3 and a green for a 3/3 Human Warrior. Whenever this attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as the card remains exiled, you may cast it. The spell has Undaunted. Undaunted means it costs 1 less for each opponent that you have. So essentially, the creature that you exile costs 3 generic less. How good is this? I think this card's pretty decent. This definitely is not the best green background commander. That one is definitely the tokens tap for green mana commander. But this one's playable, I think. You do have to hit a creature in the top 4, which as long as you're like 30 or 40 creature deck, you are fairly likely to do. And the creature gets reduced by 3 mana, which is pretty nice. So, but this thing has to attack. It doesn't have evasion or anything. It's a pretty mediocre body. 4 mana, 3/3. Yeah, this card's like kind of meh to me. It's definitely has some like redeeming qualities, but not enough for me to be like that interested in building it. And the last commander/background to kind of merge the two sections together is the Faceless one. It's a 5 mana 3/3 background enchantment creature, and it can be the background or the commander of your deck. This is just for limited. Super cool art though. Really like the art of this card. That being said, this is going to start the background section of the video. Like I initially mentioned, the backgrounds are mostly just additions to your commander's color. Some of them do provide extra bonuses that are worthwhile, but I wouldn't build around the backgrounds themselves because they do still require your commander to exist on the battlefield to do anything. That being said, there are still some like ones that are worth playing for sure, especially the ones of like mythic rares and rares. And then there's a few commons and uncommons I say are playable and not just limited filler. So yeah, we'll get into them. First up is the art you've been seeing in the background. Far Traveler, 2 and a white. Commander, all of these are legendary enchantment backgrounds. I'm not going to repeat that every time. 2 and a white for gives your commander creatures you own. All of them do this. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tapped creature you control that returns to the battlefield under its owner's control. This one's not straight unplayable. It's like a weird teleportation circle, but you have to have your commander and the creature that you want to flicker has to be tapped. So this one's technically playable, but it's not that impressive. It's just fine. Flaming Fist, 2 and a white. It gives your commander, when this creature attacks, it gains double strike till end of turn. It's fine. Be fine for a Voltron background if you want to add white to your commander's color identity. Inspiring Leader, 2 and a white. Creature tokens you control get +2/+2. This one's pretty solid. It's +2/+2 for your tokens is a pretty good anthem. Makes all your 1/1s 3/3s. That changes the math a lot. Makes your 1/1 birds 3/3s. You know how +2/+2 works. Yeah, this one's very playable if you're in a tokens deck and you want to add white. Noble Heritage, 1 and a white. When this creature enters the battlefield and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 1/1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. This card is like making your commander an Orzhov Advocist Plus, which is a pretty good effect. Orzhov Advocist is definitely a playable card in Commander. This one allows you to put it in your command zone so you don't have to slot it into your deck. 2 mana is a really good rate for this effect, and it gives you protection from that player so they can't use like removal on your stuff during their until your next turn. So yeah, there's definitely some pretty good upside to this card, and I definitely anticipate seeing this card for like a for a +1/+1 counters or a political style deck here. Veteran Soldier, 1 and a white. Whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, for each opponent, create a 1/1 tapped and attacking soldier creature token. All of these, there's like a cycle of these, one for each color, I'm pretty sure, that all do the effect of when you attack the player with the most life, you get some small benefit. I don't think really any of them are playable, spoiler alert, except for maybe one of them. Yeah, I don't think this is very good. It's not really an effect I'm looking for. Because it limits who I can attack to even get the effect, and the effect is so small that, like, I don't see me wanting this. Folk Hero. This is the mythic of the white cycle, so it's definitely the best. 1 and a white, so it's 2 mana, as cheap as you could ask, basically. Your commander has, when you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn. Obviously, this one's really good. Just consistent card draw at 2 mana. Yep. It's one of the best ones. It's the mythic, so it's going to be one of the best ones for sure. Any sort of tribal deck, if you want to add white, this is obviously the one that you pick. Candlekeep Sage, 2 and a blue. When this creature enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. This one's like the most filler of all of them, but it's technically playable if you just want to add blue and none of the other ones interest you. Dungeon Delver, 1 and a blue. Room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. This one goes great with the commander we talked about earlier that cares about dungeons. I'm pretty sure it was the black one. Yeah, the black one with Menace. Yep, this is the one you pair with that. And if you want to build around any of the other ones as dungeon decks, this is definitely the background you pick. But obviously, you only put it in those. Feywild Visitor, 2 and a blue. Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control deal damage to a player, you create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. This uses the classic text of 1 or more to that player. So if you hit all 3 players, you get 3 1/1s, which isn't nothing because they have flying, but just not the most powerful effect. If you're in a tokens deck that wants to add blue, I guess you could add this one. Shameless Charlatan, 1 and a blue. Your commander has pay 2 and a blue. This creature becomes a copy of another target creature. 1 second. Sorry about that. This effect is pretty meh to me. For me, the only reason I would play a background / choose a background commander pair is if I really want my commander to be the commander and not become something else. So, yeah. Because most of these backgrounds are just like not that impressive. And this one's probably, I don't want to call it unplayable, but I don't see why I'd ever want to play it. Like I said, if I'm building around a commander / background pair, I definitely care about my commander being what it is. I don't know why I'd really want to make it much of anything else. So yeah, this one's a weird inclusion. It seems like it's mostly for limited, but yeah, I don't like this card, but I guess I could see somebody playing it. Sword Coast Sailor, 1 and a blue. Whenever this creature attacks a player, if an opponent has no more life than that player, this creature can't be blocked. Like I said, this cycle I don't like. This one is like fine though. If you have a commander that you really want to get like deals combat damage to a player trigger off on, and you don't really care about, racking up Voltron damage necessarily, like commander damage. If you're just trying to get like a consistent trigger for damage off, then like this is like fine, and you want to add blue. But obviously this effect is mostly for limited. Clan Crafter. This is the mythic background, so this is obviously the best of the blue ones. 1 and a blue. Commander creatures you own have pay 2, sacrifice an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on this creature, and draw a card. So you're playing an artifacts deck in this pair, then this is what you play if you want to add blue. Agent of the Iron Throne. We're on the black ones now. 2 and a black. Commanders you have when an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Do not sleep on this one. Even though this one's an uncommon, this one's definitely the real deal. This effect is very desirable nowadays with all the food clues and treasures and aristocrats, sacrifice, all that stuff is running around all over the place. This puts you in the color you want to be in for that archetype, which is black. And this gives you the effect that you want for 3 mana, which is a very reasonable mana cost for this effect. So yeah, don't sleep on this one. This one is quite good. I could even see this making into the 99s of some decks that really want this effect and consistently have their commander out. Like if you watched my deck tech for my Asmarana, Mordekaiser, and Akolda card deck, I could see me just putting that in that deck, honestly, if I find myself wanting another one of this effect, because I'm basically running all this effect that exists in the black and red colors that care about, artifacts entering or dying to deal damage to people. But this one also has the upside of doing creatures as well. So yeah, definitely this card is not to be slept on. Agent of Shadow Thieves, 1 and a black. Commanders have when this creature attacks, if no player has more life than that player, put a 1/1 counter on this creature against that such an indestructible until end of turn. This one's for limited. I don't like this one at all. Next. Criminal Pass, 2 and a black. Commander creature you don't have Menace, and this creature gains +X/+0, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. I guess if you're in a Voltron commander deck and you want to add black, then this is probably the one that you add, but It's mostly for limited. Cultist of the Absolute, 1 black mana. Only 1 mana for this background. Commander creatures you own get +3/+3, have flying, death touch, ward, pay 3 life, and at the beginning of each upkeep, you sacrifice a creature. So this one is definitely a build around sort of Voltron-y background. The nice thing about this one is since the effect only exists when your commander's on the battlefield, which is usually a downside for most of these. This one, it's nice because you can kind of lead with it. You can kind of just turn 1, play this, and let it sit there, and you don't have to keep feeding it during that time. But when you're built up and you're ready to start feeding this because you have a bunch of tokens or whatever, then you can bring down your commander and start getting this thing going and start doing a lot of damage really quick. Notably, this does not give any sort of evasion other than flying. There's no trample here or anything, so they can chump block it with their 1/1 flyers and all that stuff. Ward, pay 3 life is not really a good enough effect to protect the creature. So this card is definitely interesting, but I don't know. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through for this one, but I do like that it's only 1 mana, so I could definitely seeing this one seeing play, but if I'm playing like a black Voltron deck, there's a good chance that I would just lean more towards the last one, I think. Scion of Halaster, 1 and a black. The first time you would draw a card each turn, instead look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your graveyard, and the other back on top of your library, then draw a card. This one's pretty filler. If none of the other backgrounds interest you and you want to add black to your commander, here you go. Haunted one. This is the mythic of the black cycle, so this is obviously the best one. This is a tribal one, interestingly enough, though. It's 2 and a black. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures you control that share a creature type with it get +2/+0 and gain Undying until end of turn. Wow. If you want to play a tribal deck and you want to add black, this is definitely what you want. Because Undying is a very powerful effect. +2/+0 makes all of your random tokens and stuff into real threats, even though they don't come back with Undying. Yeah, this one's very scary. I anticipate seeing this quite a bit. Onto the red backgrounds. This one's Dragon Cultist, 4 and a red. At the beginning of your end step, if a source you control dealt 5 or more damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. This one's mostly for limited. It's pretty filler in my opinion. If you want to add red to your commander and you care about dragons or dealing damage, I guess you could technically run this. Guild Artisan, 1 and a red. Whenever this creature attacks a player, if no opponent has more life than that player, you create 2 treasure tokens. This one's playable out of this cycle, I would say. This is a good enough effect where you don't really care about who you attack. You just want the treasure tokens. The one thing that sucks about this cycle, which I didn't mention a whole lot yet, but it matters quite a bit with this card, is the commander is the one that has to attack to get this effect. And you have to send the commander at the person with the most life. So, yeah. I don't know. This one's like fine, but this whole cycle is pretty bad. Popular Entertainer, 1 and a red. When 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, go target creature that player controls. This one's quite nice. Unlike the last one, you don't have to send your commander in to get this effect. It's just whenever any of your creatures deal damage to a player, you get to goad one of their things. That's a pretty nice effect, I'd say. Yeah, 2 mana is a very good rate for this card, too. I could see that this one's going to see play. Street Urchin, 1 and a red. Commanders you have pay 1, sack an artifact or creature. This creature deals 1 damage to any target. Notably, this card says that your commander, the creature, deals the damage. So if your commander has death touch or something, then this is will kill basically anything because the commander will deal the damage, and it having death touch will mean it has death touch damage, so it'll kill the creature. So in specifically that sort of deck, I could see this definitely being kind of nice. Or if you frequently give your commander death touch for whatever reason, then this would be nice. Also, sometimes this effect sees play, so I could see this card being fine for some builds. Tavern Brawler, 2 and a red. Commander creatures you don't have at the beginning of your upkeep. Exile the top card of your library. This creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is that spell's mana value. You may play that card this turn. Up until the very last sentence, I was not in for this card, but this card's fine with the last sentence. Giving your commander a bump. So if you're in a, an aggro deck or care about commander damage, and you want to add red to your commander, this one's definitely playable. And it's like, card draw, impulse card draw. You to play that card this turn. 3 mana. This is a fine rate for this effect. Yeah, this one's like technically playable. Not that impressive though. Passionate Archaeologist, 1 in a red. Commander creatures you don't have. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to the spell's mana value to target opponent. Wow, this effect is very scary. 2 mana for this. Oh, by the way, this is the mythic one, so obviously this is probably going to be the best one. Yeah, this effect is very scary. For 2 mana, the rate on this card is quite good. It cares about casting spells from exile, which in red you can do that very easily with all your impulse draw. And the creature's what deals the damage. So for whatever that's worth, if you have effects that amplify damage dealt by creatures or whatever, then that works. Yeah, this card's scary. I anticipate seeing this quite a bit. Moving on to green, Acolyte of Bahamut. I don't know if I said that right. 1 in a green. The first dragon spell you cast each turn costs 2 less to cast. I guess you could technically play like red-green dragons. That's really the only 2 color pair of dragons I could see you playing with this. It would be red. And if you're in that deck exactly, I guess this is fine. But, yeah. Mostly for limited, but this card's like fine. Obviously very narrow. Cloakwood Hermit, 2 in a green. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create 2 tapped 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. That's pretty decent if you want to be in a a tokens-based deck and you want to add green to your commander. It's unlikely that you'll care specifically about the fact that they are squirrels, but I mean that's not nothing. I guess you could technically care about that. This card's not good enough to see like 99 play, I don't think, but it's a fine addition if you want to be a tokens and you want to add green. Hardy Outlander, 1 in a green. Whenever this creature attacks a player, if an opponent has no more life than that player, another target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. Once again, don't really like this effect. This effect is the +X/+X is like fine, but you have to attack the player with the most life. You can't like target stack up damage on a player. So for that reason, I'm out on this card. Master Chef, 2 in a green. This creature enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it, and other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on them. Even though this one's a common, this one's very playable for sure. Because it triggers on any creature entering the battlefield. Your tokens enter with extra 1/1 counter. This partners very well with Lazel, the white one that makes your creatures and yourself get an extra counter. The hardened scales 1 in white. This goes really well with that, I would say. All your things enter with a counter, and then when you have your commander out, which you will when this is out, then they enter with 2 counters. So that's a pretty sweet effect. Yeah, don't sleep on this one, even though it's a common. This one I anticipate seeing play. Raised by Giants, 5 in a green. Commander creatures you own have base power and toughness 10/10 and are giants in addition to their other types. 6 mana is a lot for a background, but this one seems like the pretty obvious choice if you want to add green and be a Voltron-based deck. Because making your commander's base power and toughness 10/10 makes it really easy to 2-shot somebody as long as you amplify its power by 1 on the first or second hit with it. So, yep, even though this one's rate 6 mana is a lot for this effect, this seems like the go-to if you want to be if you want to add green and be a Voltron deck. That's it. That's all the legendary stuff that we've covered. Got multicolor earlier. This one's all the backgrounds and monocolors. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you think I missed something or underrated, overrated a card. Like I said, I don't anticipate seeing a lot of this stuff see play. Most of this seems like it's made for limited. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff here, definitely. I primarily care about the commanders on here. If the monocolor commander is good enough for me to want to play, I'm just going to treat the background mostly as a add a color sort of card, with sometimes caring about the effect of it. So yeah, that's it. That's the video. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the algorithm stuff. Check out my multicolor commanders video. I just finished that one. to get an idea of all the commander options you have for the set. Take care. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching.